everyone, and thank you all so much for tuning in to this pre-recorded presentation on diversity, access, and student attendance to environmental education programs. My name is Kelley Anderson, and I'm currently a postdoctoral associate at Virginia Tech. The work I will be presenting on came from my doctoral dissertation, so I want to recognize the contributions of Marc at Virginia Tech and Bob Powell at Clemson, and thank them for providing guidance throughout this process. This work was supported in many different ways by the North Bay Adventure Center, NAAEE, the Association of Nature Center Administrators, and the College of Natural Resources and Environment at Virginia Tech. A quick disclaimer before we get started, all of this research was conducted before the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you start wondering why you aren't seeing students masked up and social distance in some of these pictures, that is why. Now, many of you watching this are likely well aware of what environmental education can do. But I also know, especially these days, that in trying to accommodate various rules and regulations and doing your best to align your program with curriculum standards, we can forget that environmental education can do so much more than just relay knowledge and provide a fun and positive experience in the outdoors. Other aspirational outcomes include changing or enhancing attitudes and behaviors as they relate to the environment, supporting social and emotional learning, like building self-confidence and self-efficacy, and encouraging compassion and caring for others, improving critical thinking, collaboration, and leadership skills, and instilling motivations to act. And you can see how these skills and motivations would be important. I might even say critical when you consider the global challenges that we face, from sustainability and climate change issues to issues of food security and scarcity of clean water, to civil rights and social justice issues. We need this in future generations to be able to think critically about the issues that we face as a society and work together in diverse collaborations, considering multiple viewpoints in order to make progress towards a just and sustainable future. And these issues that we face will not be solved by one person, by one gender, by one race, by one country, or by one political party. Right? These are big, complex, wicked challenges that will take diverse collaborations, cooperation, and understanding. We need to make sure that environmental education, which has great potential to build these necessary skills, is truly accessible, relevant, and inclusive for all audiences. And much research on this topic has concluded that participation in outdoor learning, environmental education, and residential camps can be unequal across groups with differing racial and ethnic backgrounds and socioeconomic status, even if the cost to attend is mitigated. So while there's quite a bit of research out there aiming to understand how to make programs more culturally responsive and relevant to diverse audiences, as well as to understand marginalized communities' experiences in the outdoors, there hasn't been much work to determine what factors influence attendance to an environmental education program. So we know environmental education can do so many amazing things for its participants. And we know that participation can be unequal across groups. So if we can determine what influences that participation or that attendance, we can figure out ways to increase it, particularly for groups that are currently underserved. And that was the main goal for this research to accomplish. The study site for this work was North Bay Adventure Center, which is located in Northeast Maryland, right on the Chesapeake Bay. North Bay primarily serves middle school students in the surrounding counties, as well as Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and southeastern Pennsylvania. And the majority of their programming runs during the school year as a school field trip, where typically an entire grade from a school is invited to attend for the week. Now, North Bay is a little bit unique in that they focus not only on environmental education, but also positive youth development. So during the day, students participate in educational lessons focused on things like trees, wetlands, fungus, birds, migration, fish, biodiversity, right, you name it. They also participate in adventure and team building activities like a ropes course, rock climbing wall, zip line, kayaking, and a giant swing that kind of swings out over the Chesapeake Bay. At night, students attend a multimedia show called North Bay Live, where the educators review the themes of the day and really hit on positive youth development, focusing on things like staying in school, staying away from drugs, and being positive role models. They really lean into pop culture and student interests to build trust and relate to the students' lives. And it's really something special to see the students' faces light up and think, okay, this was made for me. This is something that I can get excited about, even if being outside in nature isn't necessarily my favorite activity. North Bay's mission is to challenge students to recognize that they have a choice in their life path, and that every choice leads to positive or negative consequences for their future, their community, and the environment. So you might be thinking, wow, this looks like an incredible opportunity for these students, and I would absolutely agree. Prior to the pandemic, this residential camp had been evaluated each year for 10 years, and the results show the program positively impacts students' character development and leadership, environmental responsibility, and attitudes towards school. But the best part of all might be that it's free for students, teachers, and chaperones to attend, including transportation, meals, and lodging. The program is funded through grants or at the school or district level, so students and their families don't pay the cost to attend. So if cost is not an issue and transportation is not an issue, what might be causing students to not attend this program with their school? In the past, the attendance rates have typically been between 60 and 75% attending out of all eligible students. So to tackle this question, we implemented an online pre-experience student survey to 6th graders from 7 schools that were scheduled to attend North Bay. 4 of these schools were majority Latinx students, 2 schools were majority white students, and 1 school had no racial majority. And we ended up with a sample of 1,150 6th grade student responses. So we administered this survey about 1 week prior to the students' trip to North Bay. And based on our review of the literature, we honed in on 2 concepts that we thought would really influence student attendance, and that's preparation and adult support. So in the pre-survey, we asked students about the preparation they received using Orion and Hofstein's novelty space theory to create these survey items. And they were measured on a scale from 1 to 4. From I know nothing at all about this to I know a lot about this. And this theory basically says that when students go on a field trip somewhere new, if the setting is too novel and students really have no idea what to expect before arriving, they'll likely spend most of their time kind of looking around and familiarizing themselves with the place. So to reduce this novelty to conducive levels for learning, they say you need to prepare students geographically or orient them to where the place is and what it looks like, psychologically, or explain the kinds of activities they'll be participating in and the rules of the place, and cognitively, or introducing them to what they'll be learning about. There's also literature that indicates logistical preparation or informing them of what they should bring on the trip and the steps they need to take to participate, like filling out paperwork, can also lead to increased learning on site. These concepts have not been applied to attendance to a place, only the outcomes achieved once they are there. So we wanted to see if this transferred to attendance as well. We also asked about their perceptions of support from teachers and parents or guardians to attend the trip, which was measured on a scale from 0 to 10. And to determine who attended the program and who didn't attend, we administered a post-experience survey on the last day of their trip. And finally, we also collected data on students' self-reported race or ethnicity and the school that they attended. So now that we have all of this great data, what did we do with it? Well, we started with this really fun-looking model where we mapped out all the relationships that we thought could influence program attendance. So first, we thought that the school students attended could influence everything else in the model. Schools can vary substantially in terms of their size, location, the racial and ethnic makeup of the student body, the resources available, the student to teacher ratio, and more. And these factors contribute to an overall school culture, which can impact student, teacher, and parent behavior and decision making, as well as create economic, administrative, or other social constraints that might influence participation. We also thought that student preparation, including those novelty space factors and logistical preparation, could influence student attendance. We thought students' race or ethnicity might influence their attendance, as well as the parental support to attend. And also, adult support from both parents and teachers could influence program attendance as well. So this was our starting model. And what we did is we tested it with our data to see if this held up. And after several iterations and removing constructs that didn't seem to influence attendance, this was the final model that fit our data best, with the key constructs of student school and racial identity, parental support to attend, and logistical preparation as having the most influence on program attendance. Now, what do these relationships really look like? Well, first, we affirmed what we kind of already knew going in, that each school had a distinct student makeup in terms of racial and ethnic identity. Some schools were more likely to have a majority of white students, while others a majority of Latinx students, or somewhere in between. We also found that School 1, which was a majority white school, had higher levels of parental support, while School 4, which was a majority Latinx school, had lower levels of parental support. There were also 3 schools that had lower levels of logistical preparation. Then we found that higher levels of logistical preparation and higher levels of parental support meant the student was more likely to attend the program. We also found that students' race or ethnicity was uniquely influencing their program attendance, depending on what group they identified with. So we found that Black students were outright less likely to attend the program, while Latinx students and students of mixed race or ethnicity had lower levels of parental support to attend. So overall, what gave students the best chance of attending the program? High levels of logistical preparation and parental support, and a white racial identity. Now, all of these factors were influenced by the school at which students attended. So building relationships with the schools you serve is critical, right? Get to know the administrators, the teachers, and the students. Trust is earned and built gradually, and some people are just generally more trusting than others. So show them that you are there for them and are prepared to serve their students' unique needs. This might be a little more challenging now in a virtual world where you can have a school from Minnesota sign up for your virtual program in Georgia. But reaching out and asking how you can help prepare the students, asking questions about the students' needs and interests, and giving the teachers and the students an opportunity to get to know you and your organization can really go a long way when you can't be there in person to make those connections. So now the question is, what can we do to increase logistical preparation? What can we do to boost parental support? And how can we erase the trend we're seeing that white students are more likely to attend? Well, to start, for logistical preparation, be careful of assumed knowledge. As folks who decided to go into a career of environmental education, you may have had many camp experiences yourself growing up, and now your day-to-day job might involve leading these types of camps. So there's a certain level of knowledge that gets built up over time that at this point might seem obvious to you, but it's not at all obvious to someone who has had different life experiences than you. So when thinking about how to logistically prepare students, put your student hat on and think from the perspective of someone who has little to no knowledge of your site or even something similar. Give teachers and students clear instructions related to transportation, right? Who's responsible for what? Are students expected to provide their own transportation? Does the school bus pick them up at their bus stop and take them to camp, or do they meet at school and the bus picks them up there? Right? Does your organization have a certain procedure you want them to follow? Transparency and clear communication is really critical. Another suggestion is to create and distribute a list of items that students must bring with them, what they are not allowed to bring, and what you do or do not recommend they bring. Should students leave their favorite pair of shoes at home because they'll likely get muddy or wet? Make sure to let them know that. Do students need to bring their own pencils and paper, towels and sheets, right? What is it that they need to be comfortable? It's also a good idea to share ideas for where they can buy or borrow the items that they'll need. Just assume that every student will need to acquire the items they need, and this might help you narrow down to what is actually necessary. And lastly, review the paperwork required to attend. Do you use all the information you collect? Right? Do you really need students' home address? Personal information can be very intimidating for a lot of people to hand out. So if you ask for the information, you should have a good reason as to why you need it. You might also consider providing flexible ways to submit that paperwork. So you could offer online submittal as well as paper copies, and a way for parents to submit directly without having to rely on the students to get those submitted. So these suggestions really apply to any program, whether that be 1 hour, 1 day, or even a residential program like North Bay. These are just a few ideas and suggestions, but I encourage you all to post in the discussion board associated to this presentation and share ways that you have logistically prepared your students to attend your program. So for increasing parental support to attend, hosting parent information sessions at varying times can help build trust and get parents the information they need to make an informed decision about their child's attendance. And by varying times, I mean not just from 5:30 to 6:30 at night, when you might assume parents can attend. So you might host 2 in-person parent sessions at their school, maybe 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening, as well as an online session. So you're giving them the best chance of being able to attend at least one of them. Right? It's a good idea to communicate in the language that parents are most comfortable with. So have your documents translated and either host a parent session in their preferred language or provide translation if you're able to. Offer flexible chaperone attendance. Right? Perhaps a parent can't stay for the entire trip, but could come for an afternoon or even a day or 2. If your chaperone attendance is an all or nothing policy, this could be a significant barrier to program attendance. And be aware that background checks, which are sometimes required to be a chaperone, typically cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $50, although this can vary. Are the parents interested in chaperoning able to afford this added cost? Can your organization provide stipends to chaperones in need? It's also a good idea to communicate who can and cannot see the results of the background check and what those implications are. Also, be clear about who will be caring for their children while at camp. Are there trained nurses and medics around? What is the student to educator ratio? Who stays with them in the cabins, and what security measures are in place? These parents are trusting you with the most important thing in their life, right? Their children, and anything you can do to put their mind at ease and ensure their child's safety will be beneficial. Again, if you have any other strategies or ideas in this regard, please let us and the other attendees know on the discussion board. So our study found that students' race or ethnicity influence parental support significantly, with Latinx students and students of mixed race or ethnicity tending to have lower levels of parental support. One related study showed that parents were more comfortable sending their children to overnight camps if they had previously had a camp experience themselves. Well, historically in the United States, camps like this were seen as a privilege, and the majority of participants were white and middle to upper class. So parents of color may not have had the opportunity to attend a camp like this and might have very little knowledge of what it actually entails. So recognize the long-standing history of camps excluding people of color, and that trust must be earned in these communities. If you notice that certain groups in your community are not represented among your program participants, it can be easy to assume that if you just lower the cost or if you just provide transportation, that these barriers will be removed. But often the source of the disparity runs much deeper than just simply money. It's also critical to understand that students of color are not a homogeneous group. We found that while students of color in general were less likely to attend, the reasoning behind this trend varied by racial and ethnic identity. So for Latinx students or students of mixed race, parental support was very influential in their decision to attend North Bay. We did not see the same trend for Black students, although they were nearly half as likely to attend the program compared to white students. So it's important to reflect on the historical and current relationship those who identify as Black might have with the land or with nature. When I think of nature, I might think of words like peaceful, tranquil, sanctuary, beauty. The same word, nature, right, to a Black student might invoke words and feelings like fear, discrimination, exclusion, unsafe, not for me. So when we think about the founders and the influential people of the environmental field, some of these names come to mind. John Muir, Aldo Leopold, Gifford Pinchot, Henry David Thoreau, Teddy Roosevelt, Rachel Carson. And while many of us hold these names in high regard, I don't think I need to point out what they all have in common. The environmental field was founded with primarily white and Western ideals in mind. And although we've come a long way since then, these foundational ideas and ways of knowing and interacting with the environment still linger. So if you're a person of color and these are the people that you learn about in conjunction with the environment, and most, if not all, environmental educators you see are white, this could be seen as a keep out sign, a sign that says these experiences, programs, and the environmental field in general are not meant for you. So it's not only important to have diverse staff members who run these programs, but to also have diverse cultures and histories represented in the content and the stories being told about the environment. So how do we make our organization and our work more inclusive? I want to share with you a book that I have found incredibly helpful in this regard. Nina Simon, who at the time was the executive director of the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History, wrote a book titled The Art of Relevance, where she describes how organizations can make changes to be more relevant, welcoming, and inclusive. And she uses the analogy of a door. And in the context of environmental education, behind this door are all the EE programs out there. And in order to attend and benefit from them, you need to pass through this door somehow. Some people may look at this door and see a welcome sign and think, this is relevant to me and I belong here. Others look at this same door and see a keep out sign, or maybe even a danger or warning sign. And we often try to open this door wider and wider, thinking that will entice more people to walk through it. Or you can think of specific tactics environmental educators might use to be more inclusive and break down parts of this door. So we could offer programs for free to underserved audiences. We could subsidize transportation costs. We could offer programs virtually. We could make an effort to target Title I schools. We can do more outreach to underserved communities. We could offer programs in another language or provide a translator. We could hire people of color so participants see themselves reflected in the educators. We've just knocked a pretty big hole in this door with the assumption that this will allow more people to walk through it. But the problem isn't how wide we open the door or how many holes we punch through it. It's the door itself that's the problem. This door was created by specific people with specific values and cultures that resonate with that specific group. So if we really want to make a difference, we need to start creating completely new doors, not modifying the existing one. In environmental education, this may mean working with underserved communities to reimagine and co-create programming from the ground up to reflect the lived experiences of those communities. And when working in a multicultural space, using a single curriculum or program structure for all school groups might not be a recipe for success. Working with each community and each school to build a relevant experience that will leave them feeling welcomed and included could start to dismantle the inequities we see in the environmental field. So ask the tough questions and genuinely be open to feedback and change. The doors that are acting as barriers are often made with the best intentions, embedded with assumed knowledge and implicit biases. So it's 100% okay to reflect and realize that your program might not be all that inclusive as it stands, as long as you commit to learning from that experience and trying your best to rectify it. So I hope that you go forth and help create these new doors for your organization. Talk with people who are different from you and listen to their stories. Get to know their culture and experiences and work side by side to reimagine your organization and your programs as truly a place for all, a place where everyone feels comfortable and anyone can see themselves succeeding because of their unique identity, culture, and experiences, and not in spite of them. So thank you all for taking the time to watch this presentation. I know live presentations can be a bit more fun and engaging, but the good news is about being a pre-recorded presentation is you can share it with those around you. So if you found this research interesting and relevant to what you do, I encourage you all to share it with others so we can start taking steps collectively in the right direction. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email address is on the screen, kelleyyan@vt.edu. So thank you again for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and get inspired to try new things. Put some of the ideas you've heard throughout the conference that resonate most with you into practice.